This episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast is sponsored by Alacrity, a leading payments fintech helping credit unions modernize money movement. Alacrity enables real-time money movement experiences for loan payments, A2A transfers, digital disbursements, and bill pay. Through a single cloud-native platform that connects to RTP, FedNow, FedWire, ACH, Visa Direct, and Zelle, credit unions can progressively modernize without overhauling legacy systems. Learn more at alacrity.com.
Welcome back to the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and I am here with my co-host, my partner in podcasting and life, my love, Jilly Nowacki.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jilly Nowacki, founder and president and CEO of Humanidei. And today's conversation is about something that sounds simple, but might be one of the hardest things for leaders to actually do.
Oh, creating space, Jill. How do we do that?
Yeah, space for the work that matters, space for the people that matter, and honestly, just the space to think, too.
You know, because if you're a leader today, the world is really good at filling every available minute of all of your time.
Emails, meetings, notifications, expectations.
And before you know it, your calendar's full of things. But the things that matter most haven't gotten, let's say, your best attention, Jill.
So today we're going to talk about the time, the energy, the focus, and how leaders intentionally create space for what matters most.
So this is something that you and I have talked about a lot over the years, because leadership isn't just about doing more. It's about being intentional, one of our favorite words on the podcast and in life, with where you place, your attention. And I would say the limited resource that we have called time.
Absolutely. And every human has the same 24 hours. I remember years ago reading this idea that if you say you don't have enough time, you have to think about the fact that Mother Teresa, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates all have those same 24 hours in a day. And really what it is that separates people is how they intentionally use that time and their energy and focus too.
And those three things don't always get managed the same way.
Right. Sometimes we protect our time, but maybe not our energy.
That's the truth. Or we give our focus to the loudest thing in the room, that squeaky wheel, instead of the most important thing.
That is so challenging. And this is why creating space isn't accidental, but an actual decision that must be made every day.
So let's kick this thing off and start with the reality that most leaders face. Where do you think leaders get distracted most easily? And I think throughout this, we'll both be sharing some of the things that we've noticed. But I would like to add to that. Do you think it's more distracting today than we earlier in our careers 10, 20 years ago?
I do. And because I think that what causes the distraction is this constant reactivity. And I think we have more things to react to than we did 20 years ago. And by that, I mean the various channels. I probably won't get through this podcast without my Teams dinging in the background. So the notifications, the alerts, and the channels that it can come through. It's not just a ringing phone or a mailed letter.
Yep.
It's an email. It's a Teams notification. It's a Slack notification. It's a Zoom. Text messages. And as a leader, you feel like you have to respond to it all.
We were just taking up someone's space before we hit record on this, texting a future guest about scheduling. So
hope he says yes.
He did say yes?
I said, I hope he says
yes. I hope so too. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. That's for sure. I think about that, and I'm going to mention his name right off the get-go because it was an early podcast, and I just happened to see him a couple times. He was somebody I kept running into at GAC just a week ago or so. But when Leo Ardeen was on the podcast, something he said at the end of it changed my life, and it was turning off so many of the notifications on my phone. And I think it's been a gradual process of turning off more and more over the years, but to stop those distractions that you were just talking about that are everywhere.
Yeah. And what happens, or one of the challenges that comes up with that too, if we have notifications on, for example. And so I keep my notifications on because, as you know, I have a 14-year-old who sometimes needs things from me. And I don't want to miss something. But a text from him and a text from a political campaign asking me for a donation are not the same level of urgency and importance. And I think that it's not just reacting to those notifications, but it's that challenge of being able to sift through those things that are bombarding you to identify what it is that really matters most and how to prioritize those. And in my world, sometimes those things that are the most important, the culture, the vision, people development, they're so critically important, but they're not hitting me as urgent necessarily.
And that's the long-term investment. That's something I think about it all the time is the distractions that come in, the sense of urgency that every notification or every email or text or whatever we kind of perceive to come with distracts from the important work that we all do as leaders. Like there's that idea of being responsive, but is it critical that we're responsive right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Service level agreements are important, right? Like what is the responsiveness to adhere to and what not to do? I often encourage people to use one of those 2x2 grids that I love so much with the axes in the middle. So, one axis labeled urgent, one axis labeled important, and making sure that their time is really being spent on those tasks that are both urgent and important. And that really allows leaders to plot out where they're spending their time based on where those tasks actually fall. I think top priorities are definitely, it's easy to say, oh, it's urgent and important, I'm going to attend to it. But what often gets ignored, even though it shouldn't, is those things that are important, but maybe not urgent. So they fall down in a quadrant other than that upper level one.
And I think we often make things urgent that aren't. So I just think back to like early in my career, if I was out on an appointment, someone would leave a voicemail that you had to get back to at a certain time. It wasn't like hang up and then text. It wasn't like we were calling that person back in the car, right? Or something. It took hours to get a response.
We used to have these paper pads like very early on that was like while you were out.
While you were out, right. Oh, yeah.
Like,
we are showing our age and many of our listeners will be nodding their head like, oh, yeah, those you'd have a whole stack of notes.
Some will be like, why did somebody take a message for you when you were out?
Right. Exactly. Because going to voicemail was rude. You had to have somebody to answer the phone, right? One thing as we're going through this, and I'm not sure how much we will talk about this, but I think it's important to bring up as well. And I do kind of think that you and I do a very good job of not doing this a lot. The distraction of comparison. We hear about it also outside of work, but the keeping up with the Joneses and things like that. And how that can distract from like what is important. I think from credit union standpoint, it's like, if this is your mission and this is your focus, what does it matter if somebody else's mission and focus is different and they're doing something or being recognized for it if that's not your thing?
And you know what? I think credit unions are pretty good at saying what their true north is. This is our mission. This is why we're here. This is what we care about. But I think there's a valuable next step in setting a strategy that does not just define what you are doing and who you are serving, but also goes as far as to say what you will not do and who you will not serve, or at least who you won't chase down in serving. I get we're open and voluntary fields of membership, we're inclusive, but to be able to say, you know what, we're not going to chase down high dollar investments or rate sensitive money. Instead, we're going to focus on this specific community that needs us. And I think that can help in those areas of keeping you from comparing, because if you see somebody across town rocking it with the indirect loans, but that's not part of your strategy, maybe it's easier to stay focused and to preserve that focus on what really matters most to you too.
There's that from the organizational side, but there's also that from like your leadership style too.
Like,
we are all certain kinds of humans individually, right? But if you see somebody else out there, I mean, I can think back to early CUInsight days, and so many of the people I was meeting at conferences and even like coming to yours back in the day and stuff, it was like, oh, well, if you're on this scene, the circuit of conferences, you have to be a speaker. You should be on the stage. I remember I spent a year going around at state league events and things like that and doing the speaking stuff. I hated it. Like the amount of energy it took up and the dread when I would see one on the calendar. And I mean, it was literally like 1 year of doing it. And by the end, I'd made the commitment, so I had to do it. I wasn't particularly good at it either, but it was just like something I didn't enjoy. And I was like, you know what, I'm not doing anymore. I'm saying no to that every time, because it wasn't just that hour on stage. It was not only just the preparation, it was like the like, God, I don't like doing this. And what that took away from, and a lot of the times the procrastination of preparing for it, even procrastinated from everything. So just a personal
And
one.
I think, that's such a relevant example of the fact that when you're creating space, managing time alone is not enough. It has to include managing your energy as well and ensuring that you're doing things that create more energy instead of drain your energy from you.
Do you think that many leaders out there overvalue productivity and maybe undervalue, say, clarity? And kind of that, it's that all, like, there's a big difference between being busy and doing meaningful work, right?
Yeah. I talk about it a lot with leadership development and specifically when we look at our middle managers in organizations, and our middle managers are often tasked to do productive work and also develop people and develop themselves too. And what I talk about is this kind of, we almost treat that people development a little bit like Cinderella was treated. And it's this idea that she was allowed to go to the ball as long as she found her own dress and got her chores done first and everything was fine. I think sometimes we're like that with our managers where it's like, hey, you can get into this important work as long as you get all your chores done first. And the joke, the tasks never get done though, right? The resources are never there. I think we do that to ourselves as senior leaders as well, where, hey, we'll take the time for that deep work, that strategic focus, as long as we've checked enough things off of our to-do list first. And again, it gets us back in that place where, so the short answer to your question is yes, I do think that productivity gets over prioritized. And it could be my bias showing through because that more strategic work is my favorite. And so I'm like, oh, I want to get the hard stuff done so I can focus on what I really love. But the reality is what I really love is also what I am best on our team at doing. There is other stuff that I am not best on our team at doing. And that's a place where reallocation would be important.
And I think it happens to all of us that, like, even if we block that time for that strategic thinking and giving ourselves the space, it's crazy how much stuff creeps into that. But like the Zoom meeting, nothing else is creeping into because that's set, but
because it's so hard to honor the commitments you make to yourself.
Right.
Like, oh, I can break that date easy. I can break that commitment easy, but no, I can't tell this other person no.
One of the things that I think about when we talk about like how we're using our energy, and there's also the when we are focused. Like I know I am much more focused in the morning. I'm focused. I like to be up early, but my brain works much better from, say, 6 a.m. till about noon. But in the afternoon, I'm a mess. And it makes me laugh. Like when we at CUInsight, when we hired our first CEO, Lauren Call, she is very productive in the afternoons. And we were in a different time zone. We had about a 2-hour window when we both knew we were at our best because, just the different times that I knew not to send her a message at 6 a.m. and she knew not to send me one at 10 p.m.
Yeah, my challenge with that, I'm on the same calendar you are. I was saying this. I was speaking at an event with our friend Patty Corkery a couple of weeks ago, and she said to describe the perfect day as part of my conversation. And I was like, I love getting things done from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. Like that is my favorite, just really like all cylinders are firing. I'm running forward. So real problematic when a good chunk of your collaborators are on Pacific time and you're on Eastern time.
Makes it tough, right? Yeah.
I swear there are times I send something to her. She's more of a night owl. I'll send something to Frida and she's still up for the day.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
She's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One of the most important habits, and I preach this quite honestly, is protecting your time. And for me, learning that it's not just protecting my time today or tomorrow, but it's really easy to fill out time 3 to 6 months from now when the calendar looks a little empty. And how does that take away from, at that point, what do I want to do in September? How do I know that today? So, who knows what's going to come up that might be more exciting. So,
yeah, that's a lesson, as you know well, I have to keep on relearning. And I'm actually in a space right now where I feel like I took some lessons from the last couple of years and I'm not as scheduled out as I normally am. And so it's making me a little bit itchy where I'm like, why don't I have 10 different plane tickets in the Delta app right now? What does that mean? So now I'm going to pat myself on the back and calm myself down and just be like, I'm actually learning this lesson for the 17th time now.
But that's why as soon as we get off this podcast, we're jumping on a train to New York for your birthday. So, and we get to leave early on a Friday. So
yeah.
Tomorrow is Jill's birthday. So everybody wish her a happy birthday. This will come out afterwards. But
Right. So it'll probably still be my birthday month though. Yeah. And I think that is a habit that many leaders get into, though, is this idea of really filling their calendars so tightly that there isn't room to step back and think, even though the most important decisions that leaders usually make is when they do get into reflection and not reaction. And so I know you're sort of my role model on working on your calendar and making that time. Are there any tips or practices that you would suggest to our listeners to really make that time and space when you are the leader who everybody has a lot of demands of, to really ensure that you do step back and have that time?
To me, the most, I think something that changed is that idea that it's like no is an answer. And it's like, that's a full sentence. It's a full answer. Like there doesn't have to be an explanation of why. And that is like focusing on what matters to you to best serve your organization, but also your life. And that's the saying that like your calendar is the one thing that it's like other people's priorities and that other people kind of control of yours, and that to me is, if you look at your calendar in a different way, it's like, how do you take that time? How do you choose what you're going to do? And it doesn't mean that everything we do is just sunshine and rainbows, but there's so much stuff that I think fills our calendars that doesn't have to. Is there a meeting request or an email could do? For me, the biggest thing is a sense of priority. And I do kind of think that that's training others to accept that about you. And it's pretty funny that people actually will accept that about you. If you're somebody who responds, like if a coworker, client, whoever it happens to be, emails you and you respond back at 10 p.m. at night, they now expect that you'll always respond back at 10 p.m. at night. On the other hand, if they email you at 10 p.m. at night and you respond back at 11 o'clock the next morning, it doesn't mean they don't want to work with you. It doesn't mean that they like feel bad. But going forward, they start to understand that, okay, they don't respond back instantly to my non-urgent message. Because that's the one thing that I would say is I think we've really put a sense of urgency on so much of what we do. And quite honestly, it just isn't that urgent. And we went many, many, many years, most of existence, without being able to instantly respond to stuff. That to me is the biggest switch, but it's also being very deliberate about that, because if it's something interesting or easy, so you're like, oh, I can just knock this out and then not have to worry about it tomorrow, then that becomes the expectation. And even, I mean, whether it's Google or Microsoft or whatever, like everybody has time to, like, even if you want to knock it out, schedule it to respond back at 10 a.m. the next day. It's already off your plate, but at least there's not that expectation of, I think, response. So that to me is something that really protects time on the daily basis. And then the other is just really protecting your calendar. That to me is, and the amount of times that has come up, and maybe that's just something I'm uber sensitive about, where it's, I make a commitment to somebody that like I respect and care about, and that 1 hour or that one day stops me from being able to do something else 6 months from now that I was like, oh man, that would have been fun. What do you mean I could have went hiking for a week? I have one thing that I have to be at. So anyways, that's my thoughts on that. But you know that. So this kind of next place, and it was funny because when we were putting this together and I was kind of putting down some of my notes, I wanted to stay away from that idea of like work-life balance. So I liked this idea of like the seasons of work and life. And this is something I will say that I think I've learned more from you, is it's not like, I think I used to look at things more as like you only have like a bucket for work and a bucket for life, and they can't overflow. But the reality is that like sometimes work takes up more and other times life takes up more. As we know at our age, we have aging parents and things like that. I mean, things can come up. At other times it's, people with young children or just life. But there's also times at work too, where it's like doing a core conversion, doing something where it's just maybe going through a merger. There's just going to be a busy season. So how do you not only, I guess I would ask you, like, what do you think on that? Like, as far as that sometimes other things do take priority. And then from an organizational standpoint and a just life and the other people that are in there, not only how do you balance it, but I'm kind of leaning down this line towards like, how do you make sure that you're communicating it? I'm going to be busy at work right now, but then you get me here, and then follow through with it, right?
Yeah. I've talked about work-life integration for decades. And a lot of that came because early in my career, I found that I was just really loving the people I was working with, and I was developing real genuine friendships out of that. And, early on, I think there was kind of this like, ooh, you've got your work friends and then your friends' friends. And now I'm at this point in my life where I'm like, some of my best friends are through this. I met you through credit unions too. And so I was an early advocate.
Not just your work husband.
Yeah, right.
The full life thing going on.
So since early in my career, I've been an advocate of that idea that it's okay to integrate. And then building this career with this idea of like, we are whole humans, whether we're at home or at work, we are the exact same human. There's not two separate versions of us or two separate, cartons of us from that side. And we shouldn't treat our time or our attention that way either. And so all of that said, each of us as individuals has goals and aspirations, and most of us have professional goals and personal goals as well. And you cannot say, well, I am going to give exactly 8 hours to my professional goals, 8 hours to my personal goals, and 8 hours to sleep every day, and think that I'm going to achieve all of my goals, because that's just not how life works. Opportunities come, crises come, challenges present themselves, that if we want to continue to achieve what it is we want for our whole life, we have to be willing to make investments and make sacrifices as we move through. It's kind of like, similarly, a person might want a fabulous wardrobe, a dream home, and a really well-funded retirement account. And there may be times when choices have to be made about investing in one of those over the other. Similarly, you might want this amazing relationship with your family and to be the CEO of a company. And if you were to say, well, I'm going to do both of these things, but I'm never going to work past 5 p.m. no matter what happens because that's what my family needs, well, you might miss out on an after-hours work opportunity to meet the person who's going to open that next door for you. Similarly, if you're like, I'm so focused on my career that I am, and I actually heard this from someone, and I won't say who it was, but many years ago, I was talking to somebody who was an events planner for the Credit Union Association of Oregon. And she told me a story that she never ended up having children because she could never time it in such a way that it wouldn't conflict with
one of the events,
the annual meeting for the association. And in hindsight, she's like, how dumb was that, right? If I would have missed one league annual meeting, the world still would have continued, and so would have my career. And so I think it's just, we can't draw those hard lines. We have to draw hard lines and have clarity on what matters most to us. But we've got to look at it from that energy and focus, not from these are the hours in the day.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. And I actually made a note to throw this question, and I wasn't sure where I was going to put it, but I think this might be the perfect place for it. And so if I were to take a screenshot of your calendar for the next month, and if I were to put it in the show notes, what would our listeners think that you prioritize?
Well, man, you were hitting it at the right time for me, because for the next month, what people would see is a lot of leadership development time scheduled. I've got some really fun projects I'm working on right now that really invest in building other leaders. So you'd see a lot of that. But you'd also see a week that my calendar is blocked because I'm spending time with my in-laws who matter very much to me and continuing to build some important time and relationships with them. And then you'd see some key time in there too with Crosby as we're preparing for his spring break, his freshman year of high school too. So I think you'd see a really good balance on this particular week. I'm so glad we're not recording this show in October.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So
they'd be like, does all she do work?
She hasn't taken a day off in a month. It's seasons. There are seasons.
Let me ask this. When we talk about what we prioritize, I am a huge believer in that we all have like different stages of life. And what we prioritize, we've seen not only ourselves all go through that, but everybody around us. Has your definition of what, let's say, balance looked like changed over the years?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure that it has from that idea of balance. And I mean, certainly 15 years ago, I didn't know about Crosby, and now he's certainly a very top priority. So the items that have, or the people, or the opportunities that I have to invest my time and build on my values, those have fluctuated in that side of it. So family maybe was defined differently 20 years ago than it is today for me. But as I mentioned, that idea of integration and I had some early instincts on, hey, just because I'm going to work this much now doesn't mean that I'm not going to have this opportunity to go have fun with my friends next month or with family there. So I think I've always been focused on prioritizing that idea. Like happiness has always been important to me. And now, as I talked about recently, that value of joy has emerged. And so I think I've always done a pretty good job at recognizing that I need to have some time for fun and recreation. Now, what is fun and recreation has changed. Travel is much more significant to me today than it was 10 years ago. You are much more significant to me today than you were 10 years ago.
That's true. Yeah.
So, but I think I've done a pretty good job of recognizing and honoring those seasons in my life. I'm concerned with the way you're looking at me that you don't necessarily agree with me on that.
Oh, no. That was my look was actually about thinking of how, gosh, like I think for me personally, mine's changed significantly. And maybe part of it is just coming off of, like, I mentioned earlier, we're just coming off of GAC and the big old credit union family reunion and things like that. And I think back to the season when Dave and I were creating CUInsight and like how much that time and energy and focus that took. I don't want to even say to the detriment because it was a different season, right? But how much effort and everything we were putting into those early days of CUInsight. And even not too long ago, like what a GAC looked like to me, where it was just, maybe 40 appointments in 5 days, like on the calendar, just running. And then to compare that to this season, where it was like saying yes to like, oh yes, I'd like to have a meaningful conversation with that person that I haven't seen in a while, or somebody that I just saw a few weeks back. But like being in person and in time and saying, okay, not I've got to run to the next appointment from this, but oh yeah, let's sit down and have a coffee for an hour or go grab lunch or go get a cocktail later. But instead of working the room and talking to every single person at the Marriott Marquis bar, actually going and sitting at the end of a place where there aren't a lot of people around and having that connection conversation with the time, the space, and without interruption to really dig into it, even though you're in a place that, I wouldn't say chaos, but it's surrounded by just humanity, right? Like the biggest event that we go to every year. And to be able to, like, this time, you heard me, did tell you about, like, oh yeah, I did this for an hour. Oh yeah, I did this for an hour. But a lot of people probably didn't see me, or like, were you even there? Because I wasn't perched just like making the rounds with those quick hits of like, hey, how are you? That type of thing. And that is a different season, because that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I needed to meet as many people as possible to let them know about CUInsight, or else I wouldn't be here today. So,
well, and if we're talking about it from that perspective, I think you're sort of in a different act of your life right now than I am too. And so I guess I say what I say and receive what you've just said with this full acknowledgement that I expect there will be a time when I'm not working full time at some point in my life. And when that time comes, now Crosby did say to me the other day that he's like, Mom, you're never going to not work. And I was really surprised to get that feedback from him. And he's like, well, you like it too much. He goes, I'm not saying you're always going to work with credit unions. He's like, but even if you and Randy do move full time to Bonaire at some point, you're going to like take care of the dogs or figure out how to coach people there or something. And I look at my dear Tracy and I think she definitely transitioned into something different, but girl still works a lot. So
we have joked that you were going to be the next reporter when you retire for Bonaire.nu.
So much fun.
Just reporting on island stuff, going back to your communications roots. No.
So maybe I just haven't arrived there yet. Like right now, it's still too much fun for me doing the work that I'm doing right
Absolutely.
now. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think that is just recognizing the different seasons. For me, one of the reasons that it is important as we're going through our career, and this again, there's so many things I feel like that are happening recently, or maybe just realizing more, or noticing them more because of age, is so many of the people that like you and I came up with in credit unions over the past 25 years are now, they were the younger leaders and now they're the retiring leaders, right? And the struggle that we see in some of our friends on, oh my God, what am I going to do next? I mean, it's like, well, no, there's plenty to do. And it just doesn't have to be on that same deadline schedule. Doesn't have to be as focused, quite honestly. You might want to take up photography or gardening.
And it's for folks who are looking at that stage in their life, who are getting ready to transition seasons, whether they're getting ready to move into like their first really big executive job or they're getting ready to move into retirement. I think you're looking at a situation where you've got to redirect that energy. And there's some force behind where that energy's been. There's some momentum behind it. You can't just rapidly switch lanes. You do need a bit of a transition period. And that's something that I think making the intentional time to really think about where does that energy redirect to is really critically important when you're shifting seasons.
Absolutely.
And I guess the other, like you get a new baby, you're going to refocus that energy a bit too. So it's probably a place that it's easier, I think, to recognize a season you're in when you're in the midst of it. I think it's harder to navigate the transition from season to season unless you're super intentional about focus and energy as well.
As we kind of wrap this up, is there anything that's been the hardest for you to prioritize as you think through?
Yeah, for me, it is the thing I keep on relearning, and I've tried every hack there is, and I can certainly tell others what the great hacks are, but I'm not great despite all the strategic and fun ideas I have for how to do it. But I am not great at creating that space for deeper work. So I block my calendar all the time and then absolutely let people schedule right over the top of my time with me. So really making the time for the independent work and to move things forward. I'm not great at that. And part of that is probably like I am an extreme extrovert in every sense of the word. So if given the opportunity to work with someone else instead of by myself, I often am like, ooh, people, yay.
You choose people.
But the reality is that despite the fact that connecting with people and that time with other people does give me a lot of energy, I also recognize that I do find it fun to spend that time in the deeper work, the independent work, and move through that way too. So that continues to be a challenge for me. What about for you? This season in your life, are you still having a hard time figuring out what to prioritize?
Oh, I think I mentioned on one of the earlier podcasts, and then I talked right over you and was thinking about other things. But just staying present, whether it's with people at work or family, friends, conversations like this. I have a monkey mind that goes all over the place. So that that is something that I think for years I've tried to work on and still continue to. And that isn't just a professional thing. I tend to zone out fairly easily. And I think even earlier in this podcast to be like, I don't want something on my calendar because what if something else shinier comes up during that time? If there's something on the calendar, then I can't do the shiny one. So that to me is just in the moments that I'm in, being present in those moments and listening. So, but that's something that, I know I will always have to work on. So
absolutely. All right, let's close with a couple of quick reflections.
All right. So we're going to throw out some sentences. You have to complete them here. And I guess I could do the same as well. But leadership feels most cluttered when?
There is negative space between meetings on my calendar.
And for me, it's a full calendar. It makes me twitchy. That's
the habit that helps me stay aligned is?
Saying no.
For me, it's starting my morning with intention.
That's a good one. Yeah. This year, I'm intentionally creating space for
thinking.
Oh, I'm going to go with being then if we're just using one word.
Oh, well. Awesome. Randy, thanks for this conversation. I think as we look toward closing, it's really important to remember leadership isn't just about what it is we do. It's not about just the tasks and the productivity. It's really about what we choose to give our attention to.
And I'm probably going to sound like a broken record here, but sometimes the most powerful leadership decision is deciding what not to fill our time with.
That's right. When we create that space, we get clarity, and that's where the work that truly matters gets done.
And so to all of our listeners, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Share it with a colleague and join us next time on the CUInsight Experience.
And it's probably going to be 2 weeks late, but also wish Jill a happy birthday on LinkedIn if you didn't already. So, but we will be back soon with more conversations. As we mentioned on the show, we were just setting up time to text. I think we have 2 other guests already scheduled. So we've got some awesome people coming up to share their journeys. And we look forward to more conversations to help you lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose.
Until then, take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks again to Alacrity for sponsoring this episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast. To find out more about Alacrity, visit alacrity.com.